Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 79. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Around the Lens is a live weekly visual journalism roundtable show that I do almost every week with my co-host, Zach Roberts. Zach.
Hello. Hey, if you want to learn more about us, you can head on over to aroundthelens.com. You can follow us on Facebook at AtL Podcast, on Instagram at Around the Lens, and on Twitter at ARoundLens.
All right, so we got one new panelist this week. By the way, this is a special show. We're going to be talking all about Comic-Con, but also conventions in general and sort of the things that go into place when you're trying to actually cover these events and sort of how we got into covering them and then kind of what our experiences were like. But before we do that, we've got a new panelist on the show tonight. Panelist David Crewe, why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what you do and where you came from, so to speak.
Hey everybody, David J. Crewe, originally Canadian, immigrated to the U.S. about 6-7 years ago, and career has been all over the map. I mean, I started a musician, then got into the law force, and then got into sales and marketing and IT, and just kind of bounced all around until I fell into a job in Hollywood, and that's when the light switch got flicked, and I'm like, wait a minute, I can get paid to have a blast? I can do what I love? Like, oh, I don't care if I'm making college money anymore. I'm just going to keep doing this, chasing this career down. And it kind of changed everything. And I just started off in the education front, working with the ASMP and the PPA and all that fun stuff. And then took over an education studio in Chicago. And through there, and one of my sponsors is how I landed one of the very first times photographing and working within the Comic-Con world. And it was kind of the merger of the two greatest things in my life, because I'm a huge nerd and I love photography. And it was just like home for me being there.
Nice. Other panelists on the show tonight, just quickly tell us your name and what you do.
My name's Tyler LaRiviere. I'm a photojournalist with Chicagoist.com.
I'm Aaron Cynic. I'm a writer and photographer with Chicagoist.com, as well as several other people.
And Ron.
Hey guys, Ron Hamilton calling from you live from Hawaii. You're watching Around the Lens. Thank you for joining.
Or listening. They could be listening. You never know.
Yeah.
All right. So anyways, like I said, today is a special episode. We're talking just exclusively about one topic, which is, again, covering conventions. Of course, Zach is the Comic-Con veteran, and Zach's been the one who primarily has been driving this topic. So I'm going to throw it over to Zach.
Well,
Zach's all you, buddy.
Yep. And so, like, basically, I think David actually might be probably has considerably more experience on the other side, considering you were ReedPop, which, if you don't know, it's New York and Chicago. And what other cons do they put on?
They do Seattle. They also do PAX East and West, and they do the Star Trek and Star Wars celebrations.
Oh, wow.
And then they also have the international shows. So there's Jakarta, India, Hong Kong, Sydney, Australia, Vienna, Austria, Paris, London, and a couple other that I'm not aware of, because we're still in the middle of talking about those.
Nice.
But they're all over the place, and they handle so many more things too, which is it's insane how much they have on their plate.
Yeah, no, I remember when they actually took over, I think they took over New York Con from somebody else years and years and years ago. It actually started being run efficiently because it was a nightmare before. But I guess my first question is, well, David, you actually answered this in your opening. How did anybody actually start shooting comic book conventions and conventions in general?
Well, the short story for me was one of my sponsors and the company that I work with was Wacom and Autodesk, the tablet manufacturers for retouching. And they sponsored a lot of the Comic-Cons, near Comic-Cons. So they often have a booth and a photo booth, and they often sponsor the hospitality booths.
Nice.
For the cosplay repair. We Are Cosplay. They work with those guys a lot. So the photographer that was supposed to do that particular event like 3 or 4 years ago, when I did my first one, couldn't make it. So the guys that I work with at Wacom called me up and said, I know you're working. Can you come cover this, just work the photo booth? And I said, sure. And, any chance to go to Comic-Con and work it for free and get paid to be there, I was going to say no to that.
Yeah.
And I was just shooting all the cosplayers. I basically didn't even get to see the show floor other than for about a half an hour or two on the last day. But I got to see so much of the insane cosplay. those people throughout that trip. And what I didn't know was I met a lot of the comic book and studio executives who were coming in to check everything out for these photo sessions.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up getting started, because apparently word got back to the Reed people that, yeah, that guy, doing the photo booth, he knew what he was doing, and he was actually good with people, so we want him again.
Yeah, that's not always something photographers at Comic-Cons are usually. It's a kind of a rough experience. Tyler, what was your first con experience as a photographer?
Well, it was a pretty easy one. When I first started freelancing for Chicagoist, it just came down to looking for events to get paid for, and I saw that we usually did cover, C2E2 is what it's called here in Chicago, and I was just like, hey, can I go photograph it? I don't know who writes it, but whatever. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And then just from then on, whenever major conventions would come around, I would either be thrown it if I was available, or, we would just do it, if we couldn't, if I wasn't getting credentialed from Chicago, so I would still try to find a way to do it. So.
Cool. Aaron and Dave? Yeah, but how did you guys? What was your first? How did you get in there first?
So it's hard to remember going back so long ago, but I know I did C2E2 once, probably long ago, and it was really more of like I went as a fan, but also as somebody who was writing for Chicagoist at the time, and it was like, yeah, hey, I was just planning on going just for fun, but since no one's doing this, why don't I bring a camera and also write this and shoot it? And it was like, well, yeah, sure, great. And so I started doing, weirdly, at the time, a person I was dating was very, very into like the local sci-fi scene, like the sci-fi meetup scene. And there are a ton of conventions in Chicago. I mean, over the summer, there's I think over a 6-month period, I must have gone to like half a dozen at least, and so it just became kind of like a regular thing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to this convention. Well, while I'm here, I'm gonna shoot it. So because it'll be fun, and so that was quite a few years ago, and so that's kind of how I fell into it.
Dave?
Yes.
Dave? Oh, no, sorry.
Dave.
The other Dave.
Sorry,
Dave.
My co-host, David.
Oh, okay. Well, the first convention I ever documented was KatsuCon in Washington, D.C., Alexandria, I believe. And if Chris Muncie is listening, I know he's in that area, and I would recommend going to KatsuCon. It's a pretty cool convention. You get a different flavor of it's just like any other Comic-Con. You get people dressing up and stuff like that. I think obviously with the anime conventions, you're getting more anime-centric characters and more video game characters than necessarily the Comic-Con. But nowadays, all those worlds are so intermingled. It's almost a moot point. But that was my first convention. I went there and pretended to be media. I said I was with AP. So they gave me a media pass. I was young, okay? This is like 2003. I was just a young, dumb kid who wanted to get into a convention for free. So I went there with my camera and, said I was media and got to photograph it. So, I mean, technically media, why not, right?
I got,
but yeah.
Good.
Well, I was the first, and I've hit a few other anime conventions. I went to the next year's one, and I played the same trick again, and they were kind of a little bit wise to it, but they still let me go in there and do my thing. And then beyond that, I've done little conventions and stuff, but nothing nearly as big as that. That was the biggest convention experience. Before, of course, obviously, my Electronic Entertainment Expo convention experience, which I'll talk about. I could talk about now, or I could talk about later on if you'd like me to.
I think we can. What I'd like to do is we can talk later on, like what our best, because you were describing before, like what our best kind of convention experience was, either working or as a fan. For me, it was my best friend's a comic book journalist, and I'm a photographer, and so I just started kind of tagging along with whatever site he was working for. And then, thankfully he got a full-time job working at comicbook.com, and they've hired me for San Diego, New York, and then basically every year, and then for a couple small ones in between. So I've covered everything from our lovely Syracuse Comic-Con, which is coming up next weekend, which is like it's like a large room. So it's nice. You can literally just walk up to everybody, but like the biggest star is like Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I know. I got to interview him last year. It was weird. So I'm like, man, I didn't care at all about WWF as a kid, but my last name's Roberts, so it was always a thing. But he seemed very disinterested in the interview. So it was like very much the Wrestler movie, the one with the Bruce Springsteen song by God, I forget who was in it. But anyway, but yeah. So what? There's actually actually what you kind of brought in a good point, David, my co-host, about actually getting in as press. It used to be super easy for the big cons. When I first started out, you literally just walked up. I said, "Hey, I think I was from not Comic Resources. That's a different site. Comic Related." And they're like, "You have a big camera. Okay, go." And like literally, I had a mini DV camera. Like a professional mini DV camera, obviously for my day job working as a journalist, and everyone freaked the hell out. Like everyone was like, "Oh my God, what network are you guys with?" and everything like that, because nobody covered conventions, and this is just 2006, 2007. It wasn't that long ago. Has anybody had the fun experience other than Dave about actually getting access to these things? Because now, if you try to go to New York or San Diego, it's a little bit of a process.
So that's the weird thing.
Credentials?
Oh yeah, well yeah, you don't have a problem. You literally print your own.
Well, for that particular show, but I mean, I did kind of forget to mention I did photograph San Diego Comic-Con for San Diego Reader in 2011, 2012, 2013. And had several photos of mine stolen and ran by Collider and a bunch of other websites like that.
That happens.
Back in the day for the cosplayers, it was great. But that getting the press credentials there was a super fun process. Super fun. Yeah. Hashtag sarcasm.
Yeah, I'll do a quick thing after, but Tyler, go ahead.
It's so weird because like C2E2, it's not a very hard process. You just fill out the form and you wait.
Yeah.
Funny because like Aaron, for instance, he got it the day of, or no, the day after.
It was
hey, our writer isn't coming. He's gonna write it. Can he just come and do it? And they're like, oh, okay, here's a credential.
God,
yeah.
I know. I saw your access.
Here.
Your access, like you're probably sitting next to David at some point during the show, like with your access you had. You don't get that sort of access at New York, or I don't get that sort of access. I'm only the 4th largest entertainment website on the internet and the largest comic book website, and I don't get anywhere near that sort of access that you guys had at C2E2. Like,
yeah, it was. I mean, it was great. I mean, they didn't even quite like. I mean, I brought in all of my gear as well since Tyler was shooting for Chicagoist. I just hit up the site Forces of Geek, and I was like, hey, I happen to be here. You guys want a gallery? And they're like, yeah, sure, go for it. And it was no big deal at all. I don't think I've ever. I've had that experience where you go to a con. Back in like it was like 2009, 2010. It was a smaller con, but I walked in with cameras, and they were like, oh my God, that's so awesome. Yes, you can go anywhere and do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I've never had the reverse of that. I've never had like a convention where people are like, they don't give you access. I mean, I think the only limits I had actually just happened at the People's Summit, and that was only and there wasn't really that many. It was just like when Bernie was speaking, they didn't want us to actually go on the stage. And that was kind of it. It was like, Other than that, you could do whatever you want.
Kind of frowned upon, little.
Yeah.
Even for the folks who work there.
Yeah. No, I mean, one of the things that why I want to do this episode is, to get a bunch of people who've experienced it, for people who might want to actually cover a con themselves as a journalist. And, I have a lot of people who, talk to me who have basically day jobs as photojournalists, but have never covered a convention. And they're like, oh my God, this is like a completely different thing. And the one thing that you have to go through with getting tickets or getting press passes, San Diego. So San Diego is in a month about. You're now basically 6 months too late to even apply for press credentials to San Diego. And it's a 3-step process, which I've been denied twice and had to luckily have connections through my site to be able to get in. But there's a ridiculous process to get into San Diego, which implies like how big your site is and this massive form like I've never seen anything before. Most cons are not like that, but San Diego, one of the problems is that, go search comic books and see how many blogs and how many websites are out there. And everyone is obviously applying to not have to pay, basically, and be able to have, you do get a little bit better access and potentially, access to celebs and stuff like that behind scenes. I mean, so it's understandable, but it is a process. It's not like Chicago is, where you can just walk in. In New York's considerably better organized, but it is very tough to get in as press as well. Does anyone else have anything else to add on that one?
Well, regarding access to conventions in general, I wonder if it's because I'm part of the international media that I get easier access to things. They think it's something special that the Philippines is going to cover something. I wonder if it's any easier for me, because I don't notice a big problem when I go to cover stuff. Of course, my producer handles all of my bookings, so I don't see the behind the scenes. But it seems like we get everywhere we want to go.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just Hawaii.
Get access to E3, Ron.
We said people, our Las Vegas bureau covered E3. I was gonna hook you up with those guys, but I never got around to it. Sorry.
And see, that's the thing I wonder about, like, our connection here in Chicago is we're not super well known, but in entertainment circles we are pretty well known. Chicagoist.com is. So I wonder if it's just because people recognize the name. We've been around for 10 years or more, and they just are like, okay, boom, here you go.
Yeah, I will, huh? Do you want me to cook you some food?
Ron, you want to mute yourself for a moment?
I muted him.
David, David Crewe, you were trying to cut in something?
Yeah, the international market thing. I think part of the reason why it's maybe easier for him being a part of that international market is, my opinion, seeing a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, is they're looking at the international side of things as a massive growth market. I mean, look at simply with Hollywood on its own and the growth with the China market. So if you're, say, somebody from a Chinese media agency looking to cover something at San Diego Comic-Con, they're going to welcome you with wide open arms, because they're going to want to get that additional exposure to get maybe more inclusion internationally.
Well, certainly, yeah.
It's a growth opportunity. Speaking business-wise, it's just a growth opportunity.
Yeah. So, my next thing, I think none of us obviously do just comic book conventions or just entertainment convention, whatever sign. Like, how does this experience compare to your other jobs? Myself as a photojournalist, I mostly cover protests and stuff like that. I always I always joke that I'm like, one day I'm going to cosplay in my helmet and bulletproof vest and go in, and it'll probably be a heck of a lot easier to be able to work through the crowds. But Tyler, just to switch it up, how does it compare? Because you cover.
So I'm all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place when it comes to coverage. So I'm covering crime, I'm covering music festivals, I'm covering politics, I'm covering protests, I'm covering sports, I'm covering literally everything and anything I can around Chicago. And it's easier in some respects and harder in other respects. It's easier in the respects of it's something that you can go practically at any time of the day. You don't need to be there super early. You don't need to be there super late. You can just kind of be there for a couple of hours, get your shots, and go home. It's not a really super arduous process like a music festival is, where you have to be there from beginning to end and then get home and edit those for the next day. The only problem that I have with it is, outside of the cosplay and outside of some of the cool vendors, just getting enough of like general feature photos on the floor to be happy enough with a gallery. This year at C2E2, a lot of the vendors were just very stock standard. Here's products on a table. We're done. Anything super cool, super fancy, super fun. And mostly our galleries just focused on cosplay, which isn't bad, but when you're trying to do full comprehensive coverage, it's, so.
I would say with covering, like the E3 or covering the anime convention, I went there with not really any idea of what to expect. And again, you find a lot of the people, the cosplayers, are the ones that you tend to gravitate towards because they look most of the time, and they're willing to pose for photos, and you get nice portraits. I mean, I see constantly every year CS's gallery of shots. So, but in terms of the difference between shooting a comic book convention or a convention and shooting any other subject is, I think, the fact that the people who are there at this event, it's like we're all having fun and playing and enjoying ourselves. It's like, it's not like you're covering a crime scene or a sporting event, so to speak, where there's a specific thing going on in front of you that you have to capture. There, it's just like you're free roaming and you're just basically feature hunting inside of a convention center.
Yeah, my experience has been, compared to many other events and many other shows and different things you're trying to do from the work standpoint of things and trying to capture these photos, is that 99% of the time, everybody at a Comic-Con is pretty much having the best day of their lives. Most of these people coming in, they're just so happy to be around everybody that's just like them. They'll be able to let the geek flag fly, as they say. And I mean, even for me, I just love it. I get in, I'm exhausted. I did a tally. I shot Chicago Comic-Con and the Star Wars Celebration back to back, and we keep track of the pedometer steps. And for those two shows, and that was over the course of exactly 7 days.
Yeah.
I walked 114 miles with about 15 pounds of gear on my back. So rocking around with the two cameras and the speed lights and things like that. And as exhausting as that is, like you get on the show floor and you see these kids who are just grinning ear to ear, meeting Stan Lee and seeing their heroes from the movies and seeing the people in costume who they think are their heroes. You can't help but just feel happy.
Yeah, no, it's great. Aaron?
Yeah, I think it's great. It's a break from everything because I'm mostly doing politics. I'm mostly doing protests and things like that. And so it's kind of like a really nice, fun break, from that kind of grind where, it's something, you're doing something super serious and super, whatever, and super intense. And it's like, oh, okay, these are, as you just said, these are people who are having the best day of their lives. And even like when you get a chance to, meet or shoot, some of the celebrities that are at a con, they're also super hyped up. They're also really happy to be there. There's nothing confrontational about it whatsoever, which is awesome. In even other types of conventions. I mean, like I said, I did the People's Summit. I mean, I've done a few other conventions, political conventions like that. And it's pretty much everybody actually wants to talk to you. Everybody wants to get in front of a camera. Everybody wants, to be a part of the story, which makes documenting it, it's like people come to you. Nobody's trying to push you out of the way, which is not the norm.
There's no black bloc yelling at you trying to make sure you don't take their photo.
I mean, there's no cops like pushing me out of the way and threatening to arrest me. It's just like, hey, yeah, sure, I'll pose for a photo. Sure, I'll do an interview. Yeah, set up, get me on camera, get me on video. Like, I want to talk to you. And I don't think I've been to, even at press conferences, those get confrontational. You're talking to, the mayor, you're talking to a city council person or whoever, and you've got, you need that kind of, that kind of adversarial journalism there, but you don't need that at like a lot of conventions like this.
Yeah.
Well, to piggyback off that, I think for me and Aaron especially, C2E2 this year was especially important for us because it was probably the first time in about 4 months that we did something that was not Trump related.
Was anybody cosplaying as Trump during the convention?
Oh God.
You know, there were so many different like make something great again, like make Star Wars great again signs, or like little things like that, or like not my emperor, or like, you know, little. But
I think the closest we got was a guy who called himself Captain Chicago, and he was dressed like Captain America, and he was actually an army. He was a major.
I think he was a lieutenant.
No, he was a major because I remember him saying something about how like it was like, oh, so you're kind of taking a demotion to do this, but you know, even that still was super cool and super fun. I mean, from the interview that I did with him, I could tell we probably didn't necessarily agree politically, but he's just like, hey man, you know, I love this city, and you know, I love what I do, and I love Captain America, and so I'm here for that, and that was fun.
Ron? Yep. Okay, Ron. No.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
No.
So much fun covering comic book conventions because, like people have stated, look, they're here to be photographed, so it's really, really easy to get the shots you need for your story when you're in comic conventions versus a lot of other stuff we try to do. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree, sir.
Nice. No, it seems like everybody.
My recent experience here. No, go. I was just saying this. My recent experience here in Hawaii, we had Hawaii Comic-Con. I don't know. Check my Instagram. I have no idea when it was. But anyway, whenever it was, people just, you know, they're stepping over each other, get in front of the lens because they want to be photographed. They want to have copies. Oh, can you add me to your Instagram? If you're going to put this online, can I have a copy too? Sure, kid. Whatever you like.
Yeah. No,
I'm sure you get the big name celebrities out there in Hawaii for that Comic-Con, right?
We had a few comic book authors came out. I don't know who they are. I don't really follow the comic book scene. Maybe you guys would know who they were. I took pictures for the story, but as far as my personal feed went, it was just kids in costumes.
I unfortunately they switched me from still, which was fun, like traveling around, and now I do basically exclusively video, which used to be a little fun, but now that New York Comic Con is the entire Japvis Center now. Like I remember when it shared the convention center. What's that? It's not the entire.
No, it's that plus a building in Times Square.
I forgot.
Plus the Hammerstein, plus Madison Square Gardens.
But that's exactly my point. It used to be really fun because it was a huge convention, massive, but it was like all in one spot. You didn't have to go anywhere. Now, as opposed to just carrying around my 2 Nikons and maybe a couple lenses, now it's also carrying my Nikon maybe because maybe I need to take some stills, but also my tripod and my video camera, and make sure I have all the mic gear, and make sure the lav mic is with the right person and I didn't leave it with somebody else. And yeah, I think I probably couldn't compete with the last New York Con, especially considering was it the last one where a torrential downpoured for like 2 days? Or was it 2 years ago? I'm trying to remember. I just remember.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, it was a Walking Dead.
It did rain this past.
Yeah, there was a Walking Dead thing, and I'm carrying all my video gear and everything like that, and it's just torrential downpour waiting in the line to even get in.
That was this past year. Yeah, I remember that because I was inside watching everybody come in looking like.
Yeah, but it's always fun. I mean, like I get to, there's always the fight with, my family going, can you get an autograph for this person? Which actually I just remembered, that actually leads me into the next thing. How do you deal with the fandom, your own personal fandom? Like if you're a huge Walking Dead fan and you get to do the red carpet, like how do you deal with being professional? If you have a take on that, anybody?
So you mentioned The Walking Dead, and so I did Walker Stalker Con, which is the largest Walking Dead convention in the country. It's in Atlanta. It's not too far from where they shoot it. And I'm not like, I am much more of a Star Trek fan or a Doctor Who fan than I am a Walking Dead fan, but I'm still a big fan of the show. And I think it's just, it's like anything else. You just kind of. You got to remember, okay, I am here to do this job. I'm going to do this job, and then if I get a chance after I'm done doing what I'm doing, like I'm going to do this interview or I'm going to shoot, this panel or whatever, and then if I get a moment to grab this person, off to the side and just say, hey, I'm a big fan, and shake their hand or whatever, like that kind of that alleviates it right there. I mean, I guess I've never been super tested that hard. Like if I was, if I went to the Doctor Who convention and, ran into David Tennant or Matt Smith, I might, freak out a little more. But I mean, or, if I ran into Patrick Stewart, I would probably abandon everything and just hug him. But I even think that it's also interesting because depending on how you want to tell the story, that can actually become part of the story in that kind of gonzo way where it's like, okay, I am the world's biggest X fan, and I finally got to go do this. And so here is what I experienced, but also here is this from a fan perspective. And I think with, especially like, comic book conventions and sci-fi conventions and things like that, people, your readership and your viewership is going to like that. I mean, they're going to appreciate that because there is something, to be said in that kind of scene where, they open up to folks that they know are fans just like them a little bit more.
Yeah.
There is a kind of like, thing where it's like, well, oh, hey, and I think it comes from, nowadays probably not so much because it's just so popular thanks to Marvel and all of that. But I mean, even 5-10 years ago, it was still very kind of underground and very, well, are you doing this piece to, are you doing whatever you're doing to kind of like poke fun at us? Haha, look at the nerds. Or, oh, you're actually into this? Oh, cool. Yeah. Let me show you around, take whatever pictures you want.
Yeah.
And I think people appreciate that.
Yeah.
When I was shooting E3, I ran into one of my heroes, the voice of Mario, at the Nintendo booth. So I took a photo with him. And, even if I was working the event, even if I was there as a photojournalist, I would still take advantage of that opportunity. I wouldn't turn down that opportunity to get a photograph with him. There were a few other people who I met. Again, in the video game world, there were no, like, big-time celebrities, no, like, big actors, but more the game devs who make the games that I enjoy. I saw a few of them. I saw a few of the people who write about games, some of the media folks who I enjoy their work. And, just quick selfie, shake their hand, say thanks for everything you do. And, I would say there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think you're necessarily acting unprofessional if you happen to admire someone. You're only human. It's now if you're going and stalking them and then taking hundreds of thousands of pictures of them without their permission, then it could get weird and ugly. But if you want to appreciate who they are and get a quick selfie or have somebody take a picture, it's a convention. They're used to that. That's why else would they be at that event, if they didn't expect to run into their fans, even if their fans happen to be working the event. Just be very courteous about it, I think, would be fine. Yeah.
David Crewe?
I think you were backstage with me during the Great Wall panel when we were trying to get those photographs. I mean, meeting Matt Damon, that whole crew was kind of fun and really a big deal. One of my favorite moments was we were trying to get his attention and we couldn't get their attention, so I just started singing "Happy Birthday" to Matt. Yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah.
He just cracked up and he's like, "All right, let's look at they said look at that was one of my favorite moments, just catching Matt Damon's attention and making him just crack up."
Yeah.
But in terms of having a fan freak out moment, I think 90% of mine is always internal. And the one and only time I've ever geeked out is when I met Leonard Nimoy.
Nice.
And we met at the Star Trek premiere. I wasn't working it. I was just there as a guest attending it. And I started having a quick conversation with him, and he found out I was into photography. So then he starts talking to me about his work, and I'm listening to him intently, and I'm just listening to this wonderful man that I've grown up watching, for my entire life. And I just started giggling for no reason. And he's like, looked at me like, "Are you okay, kid?" I'm like, yeah, I just realized that I'm talking photography with, Mr. Spock, and it's just
who's actually an excellent photographer as well. He's not. It's not even
his work is incredible. And it just struck me, and I'm like, I'm talking photography with Lieutenant Spock. Oh my god! And he looked at me like I had 3 heads for 5 seconds, and he's like, "Okay, anyway, back to photography."
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, no, my big thing is as a guy, I'm continually coming in from Like I literally was covering in 2010. I was covering Occupy Wall Street, and then going up and covering comic book, covering New York Comic Con at the same day, and going back and forth. And I just the one thing that always got me was it's the complete fan sites in the press rooms who like literally are having like the reason I even asked that is just like when you're in the press rooms like with the round table rooms. And people, you know, are like, hey, would you mind signing this, or would you do the voice of the thing that I like? And it just it kind of always gets me because it's like they're starting now that there's the kind of comic book journalism is changing into I would imagine a little bit more professional. And obviously, since there's now money in it, you know, covering these things. $1 billion
industry, no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now that you can actually, you know, cover something in more than just, you know, 12 guys in a comic book shop care, it's a lot bigger. I mean, I'm trying to think of I actually can't think of my single freak out. I mean, meeting Mila Jovovich was awesome, and a couple other people, you know, in that terrible press room. And, by the way, you'll love this. Sorry, this is a very inside New York Comic Con thing, but the head of security at Madison Square Garden got fired. So there may be a change at the security. I think he took a swing at a basketball game or something like that at somebody. So,
oh wow.
So anyway, so maybe hopefully a change in actually being able to get physically into that building. But anyway. Super inside baseball for that. Anyone else? Tyler, did you answer, or get you, Ron, or anybody else?
Well, the thing is like because of how much I cover, I have that quote unquote freak out opportunity. So many things, you know, with music, with all that stuff, but it never really happens because honestly, I don't know. I guess I'm just there for the job, you know. Maybe afterwards I'm kind of like, oh my God, I just did this. But it's more, I don't know. It really doesn't really bother me one way or another, honestly. It's just really good to be working. You know what I mean?
Yeah, tell me about it.
But also, I think also because the fandom, especially in comic book, let's just go into the microcosm of the comic book and geek culture. The thing that I am more passionate about doesn't really have a huge, it's very small in a lot of these conventions. It's Warhammer 40,000, which is like a mini war game.
Yeah.
So you might see a couple cosplayers, but that's about it.
Yeah.
There's no any representation past that. So if maybe there was, I might, but
yeah. I have my own personal one is now any kid that's dressed up as Miss Marvel, the new Miss Marvel, the Muslim one. I completely lost my ability to function when there's this girl who looked like she was like a 4-year younger version of Miss Marvel, like perfect, and her parents were so proud of her. It was this I think they were a Muslim family, and like just never see that, like being able to see now that comic book conventions used to be not even that long ago such a white male thing, and now you're starting to see people of color. Sometimes honestly more women than men at these things. And you know, and not just the women that show up in, you know, basically what is the booth babes like it used to be, and I'm happy that they're finally kind of getting away from that a little bit, because they're getting called on that crap when they would hire you. Literally go on Craigslist and you'd see these lists before comic book conventions looking for booth babes, basically hiring models to dress in the most scantily clad outfits to basically draw in all the geeks to their booth. But thankfully they're finally getting away with that and realizing that you actually just have to be real and actually have like badass costumes, which is like, I remember the I don't know if you got a photo of it, the the Iron Man costume, the full massive, I forget what it's called.
I mean, it was the Hulkbuster.
Yes, the Hulkbuster. Somebody made a fully functioning Hulkbuster.
Yeah,
if you remember
he
from
was about 11 feet tall.
Oh my God.
Oh, I think he was at C2E2.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would hope that it wouldn't be just for one convention.
Yes. Yeah, he did another one. So the guy who was in that costume injured his back, so he is no longer cosplaying, but he is still building the cosplays, and I believe his son or his nephew is now the person wearing them. Yeah. And they did if I remember correctly too, they were in Seattle, and they did a Transformer one that was even more mind blowing actually.
Yeah.
Than the Hulkbuster. So those guys are pretty intense, and I'm going to dig through my hard drive as we're talking here to try to find that photo for you. I'll send you that so I can put it on the website.
I don't have those hard drives connected, or else I'd be flipping through right now. Because I have, I usually walk away from any, which I guess kind of leads into the last question. Walking away from any of these conventions with, like, I filled a 500 gig hard drive before covering convention, and that was almost before I really started shooting video, because there's just everything is a shot. And I guess we're getting closer to the end of the hour. We usually end with a gear question. So, like, what's your comic book, or what's your convention kit bag? Like, what do you bring? And if you can add, if you could bring anything special, like one thing I always have, granola bars and cough drops, because my on camera, it's impossible to find water at these things.
Yep.
And so cough drops are incredibly important. Like that's my like weird secret, that if you're working with somebody and if you actually are trying to interview people, bring some cough drops, because it's the only way, after you do 15 interviews with people and you're yelling over the crowds to say, move this way so you can get the right shot. Your voice is shot by the end of the day. On the first day, on preview night, it'll be blown on the short little 4-hour window, beforehand. But we'll just go through left to right. Aaron, what's your kit?
Weirdly, it's the same thing as my protest kit, and that well, minus a few things, and I think that's just because, I know I'm going to be there all day. So one, I have to have my laptop because I'm probably going to file, or I'm probably going to leave dump footage. So I've got a backpack with that. I've got a monopod. I've got 2 camera bodies. I've got 3 to 4 lenses. I've got a shotgun mic and a lav mic. And then, as you said, granola bars and water, and because that's also, that is covering a protest tip, because it's another thing where you're going to be walking around for God knows how many miles, and you're never going to have access to anything, so you got to have everything with you. That plus at least 2 portable phone chargers.
Oh yeah.
Because while I'm at these things, in addition to shooting photos and shooting video and interviewing folks, I'm also on Twitter constantly. So I got to keep that charged. So that's kind of it. That's pretty much everything I need right there.
David, co-host.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
So let me talk a little bit about E3. I'll talk, first of all, when I did KatsuCon back 10 plus years ago, I had, full regular camera kit, nothing special. For E3, I was a little bit limited in terms of what I could bring on the show floor, but I did bring my Panasonic GH5. I got to make sure to plug that every single episode. By law, I'm required to. And I brought my basic kit. So I had a 7 to 14, 12 to 35, 35 to 100. So a typical three lens camera kit. Honestly, I was going there with the intent of shooting it just like any other sort of like photo subject. But I was dividing my time between actually trying to play the games, which required a 2 to 4 hour wait in line to play a 10 to 15 minute demo.
God.
I was dividing my time between videoing. I did a lot of videotaping with the GH5 and also my cell phone, and I had a 360 camera. So I was a little bit bogging myself down in terms of doing. I never really focused too much on just the pure raw photography of the event. But that's why I pretty much had that. That was my camera kit, and I kept it all in a small little backpack because I flew to LA via Spirit Airlines. I don't know if any of you have flown via Spirit Airlines, but it's an experience. And if you have a bag small enough, you don't have to pay for luggage. So I had my entire 4 or 5 days of clothes and my camera equipment and everything in a teeny little backpack. And which, by the way, I just want to say, if you ever go into LA or just in general, Nights In, that company and that whole hotel chain can go to hell, as far as I'm concerned. I'll tell you why. I made arrangements to stay there 4 months ago, and I show up on the day, and I'm ready to, I'm tired. It's been a long, I flew in at 4 a.m. or I left at 4 a.m., got there at 8. You know, I've been walking the show floor all day. It was 8 p.m. at night. I was trying to just get into my hotel room and take a break. I show up to check in. They're like, oh, we canceled your account. We canceled your reservation because we ran your credit card and it came up declined. So we just went out to the next person. I'm like, okay, you didn't try and call me or contact me or work this out? I mean, so they're like, nope, we just canceled your reservation. Sorry.
Nice.
Thankfully, they were able to get me into another hotel that was nearby. It was a step down from the Night's Inn, which if you can imagine.
Oh, God.
But you know, still, that's just F that company for their business practices. Don't ever stay with them. Trust me, if you have a choice. But yeah, gear wise, like I said, I had my GH5. I had the 3 lens setup. I had the Gear 360, so I was shooting 360 photo and video with that. I had a GorillaPod. I had a tripod that I bought that had like collapsible legs, so like a travel tripod. And then I had this cool device, which I don't have near me, but it was a gimbal system from Osmo, the Osmo Mobile. And I could stick my mobile phone in there and get very nice, smooth 4K footage from my phone. So that was pretty much my setup. And I shot, I don't know, a bunch of gigabytes of content from that. So I'm eventually going to put it all together into something and put it online, like a little mini documentary about my experience. But there you go.
Nice. Other David?
My kit currently has been pretty consistent, and you know, compared to the start where I brought everything to now, I'm trying to keep everything as a minimalist to just minimize the amount of things I have to carry around all day long. But I'm typically rolling with 2 Nikons and a 24-70 and a 7200 lens to give me the total range of coverage. And lately, I've been rolling with the newer Nikons, like the D5, D500, just because of their high ISO capabilities. You know, instead of me shooting 1.8, 2.8 and being the shallow and everything else out of focus, like I want to try to get as sharp image as I can, and so you have to go high ISO in these environments because the lighting is never awesome. So I roll with that, and I'm again keeping it light, so I have the Black Rapid or the CSLR straps for I'm trying to style it up a little bit. And then using spider holsters and clips with a couple speed lights and mag mods. Those are the go-to kit. That's pretty much everything.
Everything hanging on you, or do you carry
everything is strapped right into me, and then the little gobo gel I just shove into my pocket. So it's, I mean, it's just a little silicone gel for our diffuser, and it just crushes down to the size of a small wallet, and you shove that in your pocket, and then I'm completely mobile without having to go back to the office whatsoever. And I mean, and sometimes I'll carry a couple extra memory cards and batteries with me if I know I'm going to be roaming around for a long time. But I've been pretty lucky being able to expand my team for these shows, so it's not just me, so that I'm able to get back to our staff room to do memory card dumps and battery swaps and charge things up again.
That's nice. I'm jealous. You have a staff room. I keep hoping next year. They keep saying next year comicbook.com is going to get a one of the press places, like either a booth or whatever, one of the sky boxes. And then they never do.
Well, I'm looking at making changes ourselves moving forward as well to really add a new level of photo and video experience for everybody involved and the guests involved too for my team. So
nice.
New York Comic Con could be a real fun one this year, at least for me anyway, and everybody involved with whoever comes into contact with me.
I'll be there. So Ron, see you there.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My Comic-Con setup is just a wide-angle lens, like a 16-35, and then an 85 for the portraits. I use also the tripod for when I'm doing my on cams. If I'm going to be on the cam, I'll do a flippy screen, flip it around backwards. I have a crop sensor DSLR with a flippy screen, so I can see myself. Nice. And then I use the wide angle for that, and then I use wide angle for crowd shots, and then 85 1.8 for my portraits of the kids in costumes. That's about it.
Tyler?
Well, it depends. It really depends. I usually go with standard kit, just like David said, 2 Nikons with a 24-70 and a 70-200. That's just really standard for practically everything. Mm-hmm. And I just see where what what are my limitations? Usually day one, because you can ask the press people and they'll tell you one thing, but then security will do it the entirely opposite.
Yeah.
So if for whatever reason they decide that press is going to be in the way back, then the next 2 days I'll just bring my 300 mil, my 400 mil, and call it a day.
Nice.
So but usually it stay as light as possible, 7200 and 24 to 70.
Good. Well, I am completely jealous of all of you because so often I'm responsible. We don't always send our video team now that we finally have one. So I usually have my JV. Last year I had my JVC video camera there, or some other one. Then I have my 2 DSLRs and my lens kit, depending on which is 7200, 16 to 35, and a 35, the Sigma, the art lens, and then audio peripherals. And usually I carry all that on my back and then hand it off to other people as I go. And then I have my laptop too, which of course, because I have to do the filing. So, because I'm the only one that knows how to use Lightroom and Premiere.
One of the things I should mention too is that when I started this, I was using all my own gear, and now I'm doing them so frequently and traveling around, and I'm just so worried about breaking gear, and I've had stuff break on site. I started renting from BoreLenses.com. Everything, the entire kit that I bring with me on these shows now, other than the memory cards, are is gear that I rent from BoreLenses.com, because they're also so good with me. Like we just did BookCon in New York, and we literally had a gear explosion. We had a lens just kind of collide with another paparazzi guy that came through, and it just exploded and shattered. One of those rare moments where something can just connects in that wrong way. Yeah. And Bore Lenses had us a new 24 to 70 for my second photographer within about 11 hours.
Oh wow!
Like he just made a called them, like we pay for the insurance, and we called them up. We're like, we broke it, and they were like, we'll get you another one right now.
Yeah. Nice.
That's it's something I definitely want to look into for things that are outside of this, because I've never had one of those experiences, and those experiences are very few and far between in Chicago, because whenever the photographers get back, if anything crazy, like a lens literally exploding, everyone will be talking about it like within 5 to 10 minutes afterwards.
Well, it wasn't like an exploding, it's just we had a collision, broke the lens.
But at a music festival, and this is the strangest thing that has ever happened, one of the photographers for the music festival, a dude came up, put him in a headlock, and then a second dude unlocked the lens and stole his 300 mil.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then the company, he was working for the event's like, not our problem.
Wow.
God.
And that led to a massive change in with the music industry, who is it? It's like, I forgot who the Live Nation. It changed Live Nation's photo policy to where it is now, so that they have a contract agreement where it says if you're using your own gear, you're responsible for your own gear.
Jesus.
We're not responsible.
Dear Lord.
The other thing I look at it too is, and I'm sure you guys all experience this. Shutters are only rated for so many actuations, right? So many clicks.
Yeah.
And if you're covering everything, and I don't know how much coverage you have to do. We covered a lot, but I'm firing off 20,000 frames per show, basically. That's a lot of mileage to put on your own gear. This is another reason why I would recommend renting anyway.
No, that makes,
because otherwise you're just going to burn through your equipment every couple of months, really.
Yeah, I'm getting more worried because I know that the last convention, for some reason, hopefully they're not listening to this, because I was really lucky that I brought my 3 cameras with me, because they came up from the home office with no video gear, no audio gear, nothing. And luckily I brought everything. So I handed off each DSLR, did a quick tutorial on how to use them. Or actually I gave the video camera to the least knowledgeable part of the staff. And then the one DSLR to somebody else, and then one DSLR to I kept, because obviously I knew how to shoot video and make sure I'd keep focus and everything like that, which was a big problem. Because I have 3 or 4, I had probably 5 or 6 interviews that were completely soft at best, if that's being really friendly, because I guess that they didn't focus it beforehand. But anyway, Yeah, no, what I'm worried about is the continuing use of video now, like on how much, how much that really has an effect on. I know it's not the same as a shutter, but like just I'm shooting video almost more on my DSLR than I'm taking photos now at a lot of these things. So especially now that you can like pull a screenshot from some of the quality of the video. Don't ever do that when I didn't have a photo come out, but I did an interview. But yeah, so Tyler, do you have something?
Yeah, it's one of the major problems that we're all going to run into. It doesn't matter what we cover, is like our gear just failing on us, because like David said, he might shoot 20,000 at a show. I most certainly don't shoot that much, because I guess we're doing it two completely separate things. He's doing it for the event. I'm doing it for a 30 photo gallery for Chicagoist.com,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm usually shooting that much for a music festival, because we usually run 2 or 3 or 4 galleries. And yeah, you get around 10, 20,000 shots. And that's one of the things that I'm actually kind of scared of, is I'm trying to shoot a musician or a crime scene or something, and all of a sudden you get that locking sound. Because I've killed shutters twice now on 2 older cameras. Aaron has one of the cameras I killed a shutter on, got it completely replaced. And it just locks up, and that's it. Yeah. The camera just locks up, goes to an error code, and that's it. You're done.
All this talk of shutters and shutter actuations, of course, I have to plug the Micro Four Thirds system that is the Panasonic GH5, because you can shoot that all day, every day in silent mode, and there is no shutter whatsoever. You're just shooting that mirrorless, and you're getting that image right there as you shoot it.
Do what I do every time. So here's your sensor.
Okay.
It's probably close to the 9.
Okay. The Sony A9. I'm sure you guys all heard.
Hey, I'm not going to argue. That's a
now that is a full frame
$6,000 camera. So
you know what though, I will give it to the mirrorless. My only complaint about the mirrorless is the battery life. That is my one and only complaint about the mirrorless. You got to carry 3 times the number of batteries to get the same amount of work, but it's a small price to pay. But shooting enough of these events, I got my D800, my D810. I loved it because it had that old-fashioned film camera sound and feel. Yeah. But the more I do these events, I just feel like I'm obnoxious making that much noise in these rooms now. So that's one of the other reasons why I keep renting the D500 and the D5s, because they're so quiet.
Yeah.
The Sonys I just the Sonys I have in my kit we use for video, so like I just try to avoid using them for actual still work. But yeah, given the choice, I would gladly take a mirrorless to not make any noise and to be able to get my shots without making everybody turn around and look at me in the crowd. That's trying to be still. Yeah.
Something I don't have that I would recommend for these things is definitely like the Fuji system, because the Fuji system, it's silent. They have those leaf shutters, and they make fantastic low light work. So doing what we do in the Comic-Con stuff is fantastic. Plus, it has you can get those ones that look like rangefinders, and you always have those, you always have that classic, people don't know you're actually taking a photo when you're actually taking a photo.
Yeah. So added bonus for those guys too is the Wi-Fi capability, and on the new Nikon and Canon bodies, the newer ones. As a photojournalist and somebody, you're trying to get shots out right away. These new cameras that have Wi-Fi built into them or Bluetooth file syncing, like it's incredible to be able to get a photograph of an event happening, just starting live.
Yeah.
And you're able to just get it onto your phone immediately and make your post right away.
Yeah, that would be really nice.
Yeah, that's one of the other things. I started, again, one of the other reasons, like my personal cameras do not have that, which is why I keep renting them whenever I'm doing these events, so that if something comes up, like there happens to be a surprise guest, like Sigourney Weaver in New York Comic Con, who showed up with the Defenders panel. That was totally unannounced, completely secret. Or John Williams showing up at the Star Wars thing, totally unannounced, complete secret. I'm in the middle of photographing that as the curtain literally dropped, and just immediately transferred those files to my phone and posted it right away. So then we just had a huge more influx of people running to the room.
I miss those days when that wasn't, there was no Wi-Fi capabilities, everything. Everything was there, like, me being able to be the first person because I had a mini DV camera, or I had my digital camera, and it actually was a quality shot and didn't have to worry about it. Those were days. Does anyone have, we're past the hour now, does anyone have anything else that you'd recommend to, bring people, that if somebody wants to cover a convention, or, any sage wisdom?
Well, just on the
Pretty
topic of Bluetooth and Wi-Fi with your pictures, that is very handy. I don't have that, but I do have a card reader that plugs into my cell phone
There you go.
that I bought from
Oh,
China
yeah.
for about $1.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's how I do
too.
mine.
Yeah.
I have one small piece of advice that has nothing to do with photography, but it's survival tip, life tip for doing these conventions and doing a lot of the photojournalist events like this, and I'm sure you guys will probably agree, is those crazy high doses of vitamin C and multivitamins, like the little gummies you can get for traveling.
Yes.
I can't survive those conventions. They call the trade show plagues. You know, if I go and do any event and I don't have those things, I guarantee I'm coming home with a cold of some sort.
Hand sanitizer.
Well, yeah,
recommend
I
hand
run-
sanitizer.
I have jugs of these things everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, these multivitamins and the hand sanitizer come with me on every show, and I'm double dosing every day
Yeah.
during the shows.
No,
So it's just two gummies. I'm taking 4.
Mhm.
And then the other thing, I think you already mentioned the battery packs for your phone and things like that to charge up.
Yeah.
And one tip for me, I don't know how applicable it is for you guys as a journalist, but I got a digital watch like the Apple Watch or the Pebble with the Android phones. For me, I've put my shot list into my calendar.
Oh, there you go.
And then, because I have to run from room to room to room or building to building, and oftentimes I'm shooting 6 to 10 things in the same hour.
Yeah.
That are happening at the same time. So I put all that stuff in with a 5 to 10 minute warning, and then my watch just dings. So instead of me digging up, and it helps me save the battery life of my phone too, because then I'm not pulling on my battery, I'm not pulling on my phone, digging through that all the time. It gives me the little subtle nod that I've got. Hey, you've got 5 minutes to move to the next room.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's great.
And,
That actually is good advice. My phone, usually I have like 3 or 4 battery packs with me of like the big Anchor ones, which by the way, if you're looking for battery packs, go on Amazon, Anchor, ANKER. You're not going to be able to get anything better anywhere. They're almost every product I've ever bought from them is better than the actual product. Better than the real, whatever the
10,000 million.
What's that?
The 10,000 milliamp versions.
Exactly. Yeah. It's worth it, and they're like half the price of anything else.
I was going to say, speaking of battery packs, I actually bought a battery pack for the first time for E3 only because I knew I was going to be at the convention on the show floor like all day, every day. And multiple times I did use it to recharge a camera or a phone or something. And I got one for, I think it was like $25. It's like 15,000 milliamps at Best Buy. So those things are cheap and it's super duper handy. So
yeah,
I don't know when I'll ever use it again, but
no, you'll use it all the time.
I've got so far as to buy the dummy batteries that have the cable that come out of the camera, so you can plug it into those USB chargers.
Cool.
Dummy battery for coming out of the camera. Oh,
yeah,
I have to look that up.
Yeah,
maybe another
Zach,
subtle
you
other
can-
plug. I mean, just
Yeah, you're gonna have to send us a link on that one because I haven't.
tethertools.com. Tethertools.com. They make the dummy batteries for nearly every camera on the market, and it plugs right into the any battery pack or an AC outlet.
That I think
Nice.
we're all. I think
Wow, that
you're
is
the
amazing.
words typing right now. Everybody going.
I will provide you guys a link, and maybe we'll put it up with the podcast.
Yeah.
well, actually, I power the GH4 that's currently filming me right now with a dummy battery pack
Oh, there you go.
plugged into an outlet.
Yep.
So
And
Yeah,
then
it's
just
Zach,
a
you
Lumix
can also, I'm sorry, Zach, you can also use those battery packs for your Tascam battery problem.
Yep.
The Tascam has a USB adapter there on the side. You can plug in a battery pack and don't worry about your AA's going dead.
I have tried it and I haven't been able to get it to work so far. So I don't know what the deal is, whether I have the wrong cable or just bought the wrong thing. Because it also, one of the big problems with I have a which is thing that I also recommend if you're a DSLR shooter. I've talked about it before. And if you want to shoot video, but you actually want to get good audio, which is a huge problem, which we didn't really discuss too much on this, is getting audio. Obviously, it's almost more important than getting video sometimes, or the actual picture, because you can always cut around and add other things. But getting audio on the show floor is, you think, even if you're like a foot away from somebody, like I have a stand-up mic, like a $250 stand-up mic, Sennheiser, and holding it right up to somebody's face in the middle of the show floor or on Artist Alley, which is always really terrible because everyone's talking. It's atrocious. But also, not every camera, not every DSLR has a mic input, And honestly, I just got this back from the shop because my mic input broke. So I had to, it was a $260 repair, which is worth it. Would have been a lot more if it wasn't for Nikon Professional Services. Thank you very much. I always have to plug them. They're good people. But there is a box by Tascam. I've talked about it. I did an open box and the whole thing on it that has XLR inputs, and it takes four AA batteries in the front. The only thing is that the battery life kind of sucks on it, but it's really great because you get XLR input. It records on the box, really high quality, and you can either have a shotgun mic or a stand-up mic. And so basically you can use your DSLR like a proper video, like a professional video camera would have, you know, with the two XLR inputs. You also can kind of rig it around so it actually syncs through an audio cable straight into your camera. So you don't have to worry about, you know, doing any syncing later. You know, you might want to because the audio quality isn't always the best via the cable, but you know, for the stuff we do for the most part, gun and run and gun, it works well. So yeah, if anybody else has anything to add, David, co-host.
No, not really much else to add. I think I've pretty much said everything I want to say, but I do want to thank all our panelists for coming on the show tonight to talk all about their Comic-Con experiences and convention shooting experiences. Definitely a fun little panel. You know, we should have, and I was thinking about this, Zach, you and I, let's figure this out after the show. The Around the Lens convention, we bring in all the big hitters, all the panelists, we come in, you know, where would we have our Around the Lens convention? Where would you want to have that? New York or Mississippi? Hawaii? Sure, Ron, we'll host it at your house, your apartment.
Yeah. So as long as we can get enough sponsors so we can all get flights out there, I'd be more than fine.
Maybe Seattle. I would do it in Seattle.
Hey, Chicago.
Yeah, there you go. We got 2 out of 5 people on here. So.
There you go. We would just find out where we'll put a map with all the panelists who've ever done the show, and the one where the highest concentration of it, probably New York City, I would have to imagine. But you know, we could rent out the Javits Center. You know, the big.
That's fine. Look at I live in upstate New York right now because I can't afford an apartment in New York, so I don't know how we're going to afford that. I just splurged and bought some Facebook advertising for this episode. So you know, I don't know. Our budget of $8 a month is might go.
All we need is a Patreon account. Everything will be fine.
Well, funny you mention that. We do have a Patreon account. No one's ever invested in our Patreon.
Yeah.
So
now,
there you go.
Maybe we can get ReedPop to sponsor it. They do conventions.
I've heard they do 1 or 2. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Anyway, we'll have a. If everybody wants to throw me a couple photos from your comic book convention coverage, we can put up a gallery if you don't mind. I don't put me on the spot, but if you send them over, we'll have a gallery up of everybody's kind of favorite photos or just photos they shot recently. I know I got a boatload. I think David Crewe has a couple too that he can spare. So yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank. You have a ton, Aaron?
Oh, I was going to say, I have a ton from the People's Summit that didn't actually get up anywhere. So, you know, if you want a bunch of photos of like Amy Goodman and Naomi Klein and Bernie Sanders.
What did Bernie Sanders cosplay as? Did he cosplay as Larry David?
Yes,
like he always does. There you go. Yeah.
He cosplay as the 2016 president.
Oh,
too soon.
Anyway.
All right. Well, I want to thank so much Aaron, David, Ron, and Tyler for being on our panel tonight. And as for Zach Roberts, I am David Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 79, and we are out.